I don't know if you know this, but the draft's tomorrow. And the Cardinals have a pretty important decision that's going to have a direct impact on many teams, not just themselves. What should they do? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter. I had to make a damn new one at Clancy's Corner _. I was going to do Clancy's Corner LOC, Clancy's Corner NFL, but I like to talk about basketball too. So I just, did the closest thing to my last Twitter that is now defunct. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it. I have a competitive side, and I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go. The mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly, if you haven't heard of it. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Joining me today, Damian Parson at DP_NFL, half of the Locked On NFL podcast group, a part of the Draft Network as well. One of the best draft minds in the game. Dame, thanks for joining me, dude.
I appreciate it, man. I got a lot of love for the Cardinals nation, so I have no problem coming on and talking some ball.
Yeah, so here's the thing. We're going to talk about a couple things. For those that are watching on YouTube, you'll see that the thumbnail of this was Draft MHJ and Thrive. That was a direct DM I got from Damian Parson when I asked him what he thought the Cardinals should do with the number 4 overall pick. And we did the Locked On NFL mock draft a couple weeks ago. We recorded it a couple weeks ago. It was posted late last week. And if you watch, I accepted a 3 first-round pick trade down from Minnesota, 11, 23, and a 2025 first. And when the picks came out, Damian Parson rolled his eyes more than my high school teachers did when I turned in homework. So I did it as an exercise. And we joke and fun, but what it looks like without Marvin Harrison Jr. is a lot scarier than what it looks like to just stick and draft. Before we get into anything else, Dame, are you on the Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, regardless of trade package offer?
Yes, I am. I think when you're in range at 4 and you don't need a quarterback. Now, granted, the QB tax is real. So if a team wants to trade up, I think Monty ORourke talked about it. You got to have the right package if you want to get us out of this 4th spot. And that's just QB tax, right? But for me, is understanding what we saw from Kyler down the stretch after coming back from that ACL injury the year before, watching him, really look like truthfully, such a confident player in this offense that's far different from what Cliff Kingsbury ran during his years as the head coach. I was like, okay, you have Kyler Murray. We know what Kyler Murray looked like with DeAndre Hopkins, having that big X receiver, guy that can run routes, separate, but also if he's covered, he's still not covered because I can throw it up. And Kyler's accurate deep ball passer as well, throws good back shoulder fades. He gives his big body targets opportunities. And when you have Trey McBride, who I'm going to say first off, I remember going into that Senior Bowl with Trey McBride was there. I was a little lower on Trey because I just saw some movement issues. I'm like, man, I don't know how this is going to work in the league. I could see he's really strong-handed. He's great at contested catch, but I was a little concerned about his ability to separate from NFL defenses and defensive players. But I'm telling you right now, I'm happy to be wrong about this young man. He's going to, if he's able to do what he did last year in 2024, he's going to push himself into that top 4 discussion, maybe top 3 in terms of tight ends in the league. That's how good he was in 2023. So when you have him, James Conner's running the rock, I'm like, you put Marvin Harrison Jr. here, you get that guy that I like to say changes the math, shifts the coverage, because that's what he did at Ohio State, right? So, and also I think the other part is if you trade out and you get those 2 first-round picks from Minnesota, because that's who I don't think anybody else has enough capital to outbid Minnesota and their package be absolutely enticing. Then you trading out of the realm of any of the big 3 wide receivers. That's not just Marv, but it's Malik Nabers. That's Odunze. And with wide receiver being such a big need, I love Michael Wilson. Originally off the film, I gave him like a late 2, early 3rd round grade, but he had injuries throughout his entire career in college. And it's like that history is hard to kind of push away in your mind. So it's like, all right, can you stay healthy in the league? We've seen other guys struggle with it, like Rashad Bateman, for the Baltimore Ravens. In Minnesota, he struggled with injuries, and he struggled with them in the league. So I don't want to put all my eggs in Michael Wilson's basket. Is no matter how talented he is, I'd rather give Kyler Murray a Marvin Harrison Jr., who's going to come in, the route running, the separation, the ball skills. He's a great blocker. He's got really good open field speed, physical as a route runner. This is a guy that is really hard to just be, to get a lot of hands on, because he fights through it so well. And then he also knows how to beat double coverage. And that's something that's really big for me again when I'm watching receivers. It's easy to go one-on-one and safeties aren't able to pay attention to you because you got 2 or 3 other guys that's taking attention away, or your team moves you around where they can't get a beat on you. Marvin Harrison Jr., teams went in every week double teaming him. And crazy thing about it, that double team started in 2022 while JSN was still there. For the week 1 matchup against Notre Dame, JSN was on the field, and Notre Dame still double team Marvin Harrison Jr. I'd rather get that. I don't use the term generational. I absolutely hate that term.
Same.
I can't stand it. So I'd rather get that elite wide receiver prospect at 4, especially when you have, I think the Cardinals have 5, almost 6 picks within the top 100. They have a lot of draft capital to fill some needs.
Yeah. Damian Parson, Locked on NFL Draft Network, joining here, Locked on Cardinals. I get it. And I've said this multiple times. I was on the trade back train for about 80% of the offseason. And just because it made too much sense if 3 first-round picks were available. It was the smart thing to do. The Cardinals never do the smart thing. Drafting a wide receiver in the top 5 never works, and you go with history on something like this. Having said that, I had this, and I talked to listeners about this Monday of last week. I took the weekend before that. I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit my ass down and really have a conversation with myself like, okay, they've got draft capital this year, next year. They got all the money for next offseason. It's going to be fun if Marv goes 4. He's going to be a star. It's going to be Kyler Murray. I get all the positives. My question to you is, Damian Parson, Locked on NFL Draft, who focuses on this with all teams, not just the Cardinals, and has for many, many years. The Cardinals need interior defensive line help. They need offensive line. They need pass rush. They need corner. They need everything. Game. So wide receiver for me is the 3rd or 4th most important position, not named quarterback. So that's where I struggle. Tell me why it's different now.
So your concerns are valid, right? I 100% agree with that. When you have, I think with the draft capital they have, it's such a loaded group, whether it's offensive line, receiver, even defense, right? It's a really good group in terms of edge, corner, interior defensive line. That's why for me at 4, especially having 2 first-round picks, right? And there's a lot of buzz, and there's been some buzz, truthfully, for a while, that this team, like not this team, but that there could be 5 to 6 quarterbacks in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked by that, right? Because you have teams like the Broncos who, they traded for Zach Wilson, but it's Zach Wilson. Is that keeping me from drafting a quarterback in 2024? Absolutely not. So I could see the Broncos making the decision, maybe trade back because they don't have a 2nd-round pick, add a 2nd-round pick with someone that wants to move up for an offensive tackle, move up if Brock Bowers is sliding down the board, right? So something like that, and trade back, get an extra pick on day 2, and maybe an extra pick next year, and then take a Bo Nix, right? A guy that would fit that Sean Payton type of offense. Then you look at the Raiders at pick 13. I don't think they're moving. I think that's a really strong spot for Michael Penix Jr. because Aiden O'Connell is okay. Gardner Minshew is a wily veteran, and we know what he can give you. Very scrappy, a great leader, but he's not the answer. So I could see both of those teams, especially with Minnesota more than likely trading up for J.J. McCarthy or Drake May, depends on how high they can get up. That's 6 quarterbacks, which means by the time you get to pick 27, there's a stud falling down the board because teams prioritize those quarterbacks, right? Again, QB tax. QB tax matters when it comes on the draft, trading up. It also matters with teams overvaluing the QB position, reaching on some guys that you could get in day 2 and then pushing really good players down the board. So I could see it like a Jerson Newton out of Illinois, to improve the interior defensive line. Byron Murphy, the second out of Texas, falling down the board. I think those are the situations where, or especially corner, corner or edge. I think about one of my recent mocks. I put Darius Robinson to the Cardinals at that 27th pick, because that's a guy that can play that strong side defensive end, also kick down to 3-4 and harass interior offensive linemen with his power, his arm length, his speed, everything else, and collapse that pocket for Jonathan Gannon. So, he could probably be his Brandon Graham, to be completely honest, and, just a different body type and different athletic profile. So I think that's where I look at it. And of course, when you look at just the overall, like just the draft picks in general, having that second rounder at 35, high second round pick. You have third round 66, 71, 90, and then you have pick 104, which is right at in the fourth round, right after the 100th pick, right? 4 spots after that. That's what, 7 picks, like that. That's a really good spot to be in, where you could take a Marvin Harrison Jr., take best defensive player available, and then that third round, especially interior offensive lineman, this is a good group of guys, so you can get someone in the third and even fourth round.
Yeah. What's interesting, and I'll talk about this on the other side. It seems like, from what you're saying, because you haven't said anything otherwise, and we can clarify this on the other side. This is what we call a tease in the biz. Is seems like Marvin Harrison Jr. is the clear-cut guy for you at 1, which isn't for everybody. If I'm wrong, I'm excited for you to tell me next. Alex Clancy, joined by Damian Parson from Locked On NFL Draft and the Draft Network. We'll be right back. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by eBay Motors. So here's the thing. eBay Motors has passion, drive, and patience. Those are the 3. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, man. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Second segment, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Follow me on my new Twitter at Clancy's Corner _ Stupid. Dame Parson at DP_NFL, Locked On NFL Draft Network, one of the best in the biz. So I haven't gotten sick of talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. How can you? I've kind of the last couple days focused on 27 and then 35 in the third rounders, which we can talk about a little bit in the last segment. Just some names for everydayers to watch out for as we get into day 2 and beyond. But I want to, double back to what I teased going into the break. Is Marvin Harrison Jr. 1 and 1 alone, or is Malik Nabers there enough? And the reason why I ask is the new trade offer is the Giants going up to 4, the Cardinals getting maybe a future 2 and maybe a second this year. I don't know. They may have to compete with other teams, and the Cardinals would draft Malik Nabers, assuming or Odunze. Is Marvin Harrison Jr. worth more than one of those other 2 guys and more draft capital?
Marvin Harrison Jr. is my wide receiver 1. And I literally just dropped my top 15 wide receiver rankings today. No, it does debut on YouTube later today on the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel, where I went off of my grades, right? And Marv was at number 1, Rome was at 2, Malik was at 3, but 2 and 3 are very close. Yeah. And so if you're in a situation where the Giants, and it's a real possibility that from people I've talked to, the Giants are absolutely looking at, quarterback. They're considering it, right? So if they called and said, hey, we want to swap first, give you a extra second this year, because I think they have pick 47 from the Seahawks, and then we give you a second next year, that would give you essentially 7 to 8 picks in the top 105. That's legitimate draft capital. And if you fall to there, or you swap, you accept that trade, I'm not opposed to that. As much as I love Marvin Harrison Jr., like I said, as long as you're not moving out of the realm of getting Rome and Malik, I'm fine. I think either guy would work with Kyler Murray. I think Malik, me and Keith talked about, him being a fit. How would he fit with the Cardinals? I think it was like maybe a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, and we felt like Malik Nabers would be a great fit in terms of the RPO action, the play action stuff, his explosiveness, the run after the catch. Then when Kyler starts scrambling and Malik detaching away from the initial coverage and getting in the open space, and Kyler's ability to create those second reaction throwing lanes and windows and opportunities will make him very dangerous. And Rome, similar to Marv, in terms of being a big body guy that knows how to get open and run routes, also good athleticism, and both, are dominant at the catch point, where that's where, those two guys kind of separate from Malik. Malik's not an X receiver, in my opinion. And the guy that in the red zone, you're going to throw those contested, those trust throws, where it's like, hey, it's you versus Jalen Ramsey. I'm trusting my guy, right? We've seen Kyler throw to D-Hop in those situations, and D-Hop comes down with that ball. That's not where I would put a Malik Nabers in that category. I'll put Rome and Marv. So I think as long as you're inside that top 6 to 7, where you have your option at one of those 3 guys, I'm fine with that. Like, just moving like that moving back into that 11 spot gets really tricky, because then, and I remember Williamson said it on the mock draft special, he was like, man, I'd hate to be the first team in the top 10, the top 12 picks that picks a defender in such a loaded offensive class. And I was like, no, that's a good point. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to be the first team to take an edge, if you're top 12, where you want to be able to get one of these receivers or get one of these top tier offensive tackles if you need one. But luckily, having Paris and then now getting Jonah, offensive tackle is not as big of a need as it was prior to free agency. But yeah, if you're still in range for Malik or Rome, and if you can't get Marv because you traded down, I'm fine with that as well.
Yeah. Well, that just muddies the water. So thank you very much for that. This is all it's been, man, for the last couple months. I had Eric Eager on from Sumer Sports, just a mathematician. I asked him this question, and I want to ask you this question also from a draft perspective. This is a self-serving question, because this is a trend that I've seen that I don't know if it's mainstream yet, a conversation, because people are so, just blind by the star-studdedness of wide receivers coming out of college now. And we'll get to late round names next. Is there more pressure to hit on a wide receiver now, like there was with quarterbacks, because of how much money wide receivers are going to make after their rookie scale deal? And because of that, we're seeing guys not get paid by the team that drafted them because of how much money they're going to make. So it's like a Super Bowl window for a quarterback that's now a wide receiver, not exactly the same, but do you see there's more pressure to hit on wide receivers higher because of that? Or is that just a happenstance?
No, I think there is pressure. And then it's like you said, like receivers are getting, at this point, receivers are making low quarterback money, right? Yeah. Like Jamar Chase is probably going to clock in at 32 mil APY. That's a low end quarterback type of deal, man. Like Justin Jefferson, north of 30. I think Tyreek Hill is either at the right on 30 or right below it at like 29, 28. Like it's getting like, I'm really big on this. Like, it's getting kind of ridiculous, because it's like, even with quarterbacks, like at the end of the day, it's still a team sport. And it's like, right. Now when you start spending money and a heavy percent of your cap goes to 2 to 3 main guys, now your scouting department, now your GM, there's so much onus thrown on them to nail the draft year in, year out after you start doling out that top tier cash. So yes, if you're in that situation and you draft a receiver high, you at 100% want to hit and be successful during that receiver's run, because once you pay them, like, they're still going to be productive. Tyreek Hill is still productive, right? But right. At the same time, we saw Pat Mahomes win 2 Super Bowls, go to 2 Super Bowls, and everything like that, even without him. So I think that's a big thing right now is teams are willing to, and it's because the influx of talent, the takeover from 7-on-7 at the high school level is preparing these young men at wide receivers. These kids are going to camps nonstop, constantly working on their craft, being coached by veterans and former, college stars, former NFL stars at these camps at a young age now. So they're coming into college more prepared. Then they start getting their opportunities. They grow within college. Now they're ready to come to the NFL, and they're more advanced in a lot of ways and ready to play than a decade and a half ago, where 7-on-7s was just really starting to get going. So I think that's a big part too, is that teams are looking at it as like, well, and then, I think Joe Marino, our colleague, who does Locked On Bills, tweeted out something like that about how some of the top paid receivers right now weren't first round picks. They were day 2 guys. Now, granted, some of them fell due to some medical stuff and different things like that. And, teams just overlooking guys or overthinking it, as they do every year from the draft. But it does show up where you can find guys later on. Is the risk a little bit more? Yes, because you look at a Jamar Chase. Would you rather get a Monterey St. Brown than a Jamar Chase? You're going to be successful regardless, right? But now both of those guys are going to get paid high dollar amounts, regardless of where they were drafted.
Yeah, just that Amon-Ra was getting Brock Purdy money, comparatively speaking, and that's going to change real quick. Yeah, just one quick thing, and then we'll pivot. So Steve Keim had the opportunity a couple years ago to have the greatest draft day trade in the history of the Arizona Cardinals, where he flipped Andy Isabella to Miami for a second, or Josh Rosen to Miami for a second-round pick. Could have turned that into DK Metcalf. That would have been the greatest draft day trade in the history of the Arizona Cardinals. Ended up taking UMass's own Andy Isabella, who is now, I believe, out of the league. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Dame Parson, Locked On NFL Draft and Draft Network. What are some names? You've got a day. You want to go on YouTube? Dame's going to tell you some names to watch. I've discussed some. I want somebody smarter than me to tell you more. We'll discuss it next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Damian Parson knows that I'm a competitive dude. It's fun. It's fun to be competitive. And my competitive side gets quenched when I take part in Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play not one, but on hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game, join your friends, download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. We got 4 segments left, man. Today and tomorrow, and that's it. Then the world is in Monty Ossenfort's. The shocking revelation that Monty Ossenfort did in 18 months, what Steve Keim couldn't do in a decade, baffles me. Insane. And listen, and Dame Parson at DP_NFL, one of the best we got here in the Locked On NFL podcast portion of the Locked On Podcast Network, host or co-host of Locked On NFL Draft, also part of the Draft Network. Kyler Murray's injury came at a perfect time. And I say that not tongue-in-cheek. I said, because you never want anybody to get injured, even your biggest enemy. Anybody that thinks otherwise, you're a terrible person. I'm sorry. And I thought initially that when he got injured, it's like, oh no, they may move off from him. And I feel like right when Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort came in, they're like, we took the job because he's here. That was a huge catalyst for them taking the job. So with that, he comes in, he plays competent football. He's shown some flashes, got the dub in Philly, almost got a dub against Seattle, but thank Matt Prater for pushing that kick at the end of the game, because now the Cardinals can draft Marvin Harrison Jr. So for those that think the winning games in Week 18 matter for confidence and momentum, doesn't. Dame, we're pivoting now, okay? Monty Ossenfort's got the world at his feet. We'll see what happens day one. It's going to be one of a couple things. I think he's just going to stick and pick at 4. We'll see if he moves up or moves back from 27. That'll be the more interesting part for me. But when we get into day 2, the Cardinals have 4 picks in the top 100 after the first round. Give me names, okay? Talk to me about Frazier, the center out of West Virginia. Is he going to be there in the second round? Talk to me about third-round picks. Is Edgerrin Cooper an off-ball linebacker that should be drafted that high? I know he's looked at as potentially the best off-ball linebacker in an off-ball linebacker-like draft. Is Trey Benson the best running back in the draft? Just throw up on me and tell me everything I need to know for the second and third-round pick as pertaining to a team that needs everything.
Yeah, I think, you're talking about Zach Frazier. I think he's going to go higher than we expect. I think he's going to go at worst second round. There's been some buzz about first round, but he's a good player, strong handed, guy. I think he has a wrestling background, good player. I don't think he gives you like JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, gives you kind of center guard flexibility. I don't see that from him, but I know that the center spot or interior offensive line spot has been one that's been kind of a weak spot for the Cardinals. So, definitely day 2, you think about guards and interior offensive linemen that could be there. If they wanted to snatch one in the second round, I think about Christian Haynes out of UConn. This is a dog, man. No pun intended. He's a dog, even though he's a Husky. Like watching him at the Senior Bowl, I was really impressed with him. Strong, he's athletic, good footwork, lateral agility, he can pass pro. He can also take snaps at center too. He's not a true center, he's more of a guard, but he showed the ability at the Senior Bowl to do both. Cooper Beebe, interior offensive line, second, third round. I think he could be in that sweet spot, especially for the way that Drew Petzinger has built this offense to be a physical, smash mouth, almost like old school early down team. Cooper Beebe would be a perfect fit for it in terms of making not just run lanes, but highways for James Conner to hit running full speed downhill. This is a bully. He is absolutely a bouncer at a club door that's going to get guys that are not supposed to be in line. He's going to take you out of the line. I really love what he brings. And I think day 2 for sure is going to be there for him. I think, maybe second, depends on how things fall with some of these receivers and corners and everything. But talking about corners, I think this is a really good corner group. Is there a little bit of a drop off after like the first round guys? Potentially, but I still see a lot of good talent, right? Mike Sanders still may not be there, may not be the guy for the Cardinals, because they picked some smaller sub 6 foot corners last year, but another really good guy, former wide receiver at Michigan, played nickel at 5'10", $180, physical, great feet, good athlete. And it's Rakestraw from Missouri, a guy that is really sticky in coverage, being hip to hip with guys in man to man. TJ Tampa out of Iowa State, big, long. I'm telling you right now, guys, if you got time before the draft, turn on the tape of Iowa State versus Texas. You get to see him against Adonai Mitchell, who's one of the more polarizing receivers in this class. And it was master's work from TJ Tampa, which I really, really enjoyed watching him. Max Melton, maybe one of my favorite corners on, I'm talking about day 2, the brother of Bo Melton, the receiver from the Packers. Max, from Rutgers, 5'11", 6 foot, almost 200 pounds, physical guy, gets into your grill at the line of scrimmage, plays a physical brand of football, really good coverage defender. And I think that you can feel really happy with a guy like that in your secondary. I know Edge is still a spot for the Cardinals in terms of finding that guy and a couple teammates here that I think could be on day 2. Chop Robinson from Penn State. So I'm going to give you that fastball, Harold Landry, potentially like that Von Miller type of first step explosiveness, bend around the edge type of guy, kind of a little bit undersized in terms of arm length and everything. He's actually better against the run than a lot of people talked about, but his teammate also, Adisa Isaac, is what, 6'2", 6'3", no, 6'4", like 250, strong-handed. I remember Olu Fashanu, the star tackle from Penn State, told us at the combine that, dealing with those two guys, he learned how to deal, one with speed and bend and explosiveness from Chop. He said, Adisa kind of taught me everything. Like, I have to be prepared for a variety of moves, inside rush, outside rush, bull rush. He has counters. He said he taught me a lot. So I think those are some guys, especially at top of second round. Chris Braswell, the former running mate with Will Anderson Jr. From Alabama, big, strong-handed kid, 6'2", 6'3", 250, more of a power rusher than a bend the edge. But as we've seen with like a Trayvon Walker, as we've seen with a Aiden Hutchinson and different guys like that, you don't always have to have the smoothest hips to get around the corner and close to the quarterback and be effective in the NFL. His power to collapse, his hand usage to displace guys is really, really good. And I think even, looking into, the third round, you think about a guy like Marshawn Nealon, 6'3", 275 out of Western Michigan, a high octane motor. He never stops, and he's got strength. He's got quickness. He can collapse the pocket, with bull rushes. And one of my favorite kind of late day two, you're talking about third round guys, Austin Booker out of Kansas. Yep. Guys, a young man that is twitched. He's explosive. Another guy that has a really high motor, but what I love about him is his work ethic as well. Guy that's constantly trying to learn and develop hand counters and moves. I remember watching him at the Senior Bowl after practices, go by himself to the field goal post before walking into the locker room or walking to the bus and out of the stadium, and he's working on his hands. He's working against the field goal post, just working on what he was learning and what he didn't do right, what he did right, trying to master his craft. And guys like that, you 100% feel really good about. And then one more edge, Braylon Trice, a guy that's very under-discussed in this 2024 NFL draft class out of Washington, 6'3", 270. He came into the combine. He weighed a little bit less, but he typically plays north of 260, if I remember correctly, 260, 270. Guy that can convert speed to power. He's got quickness off the ball. He can set the edge in the run game, but he's also what I like to call a two-laned type of rusher where he can sell outside, work back inside. He can work inside, spin back outside. He's got some nice counters to him. And then, just looking at truthfully, I wouldn't be surprised. Like you talk about, Trey Benson, I think third round is where we see running backs come off the board, especially after the free agency we saw with running backs. I think that for me, Trey Benson is my RB1. Size, strength, power, downhill ability, solid footwork to get in and out of traffic, but also that home run hitting speed, 4.39 in the 40. You don't really see that at the running back position at that size. And then one more guy at the running back position that I think I'll say two. Tyrone Tracy from Purdue, probably third, maybe, at third at earliest, but definitely fourth, fifth round, talking about day three, because just the running back class. Former wide receiver convert, 6 foot, 210. Kid has good speed. He's got, he's going to fit more of a zone scheme, but like just his ability as a full weapon out of the backfield, catching the ball, you can line him up against corners because he played 2 or 3 years at actual receiver where he beat cornerbacks one-on-one, put him up against safeties and linebackers. He's an absolute mismatch. And then one of my favorite guys, Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, maybe the most explosive and the best home run hitter in the 2024 RB class. I think you can get him third to fourth round as well. A guy that's sub 4.3, I think it was like 4.3 in the 40. He's the type of guy you put in this offense to complement James Conner before he takes the reins from James Conner after his contract ends. You get him into open field, it's a house call almost every single time. I've never seen him get caught from behind once he reached top speed. This young man's a home run hitter, and this is the type of guy you would love to have in this offense with the RPO game, the zone read game with Kyler Murray, and then when you have more receiving weapons where you can't load the box, yes, that's how you build up an offense.
You want Cliff Notes between now and the draft? Go follow Dame at DP_NFL. That's how I got through high school and college, so don't judge me. I know Cliff Notes when I see it. You can check them out, Locked On NFL Draft, free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I wish we could do another hour, but Ross Jackson's going to get mad at me. Alex Lanty, Locked On Cardinals. Dame, thanks for joining me. I will talk to you tomorrow.
Anytime.